Good morning. Let's recall what we have learned before. In the last session, that means yesterday, we have seen the revolution in everyday life. Means the political changes in France changed the people's lives, right? So today we are going to discuss about conclusion of this chapter and few additional information we will discuss today. So earlier I told you that directory rule established in France, but it wasn't successful. And I told you that time that it gave a way to the military dictator Napoleon Bonaparte. In 1804, Napoleon Bonaparte crowned himself Emperor of France. He became Emperor of France. Sorry, it means that Republic, democracy in France destroyed by Napoleon. And again in France that dictatorship established. Like, let's recall all the changes from absolute monarchy in France under Louis XVI, from absolute monarchy to constitutional monarchy 1791, from constitutional monarchy to the republican country, and in republic that Jacobins established the government, but couldn't survive for long. After the Jacobins government, we have seen that directory rule in France, and once again in 1804, so within 20 years, around 24 years, again that military dictatorship. So he set out conquer neighboring European countries. As Napoleon, if you have heard about him, he was the great military strategist as well as the warrior, and he was very ambitious. He wanted to rule all over the Europe. So he set out to conquer neighboring countries and disposing the dynasties. That those neighboring countries ruled by different dynasties. So he disposed them, and he placed his family members over there in different territories. So ultimately, all those territories came under control of him, came under control of France. Napoleon saw his role as modernizer of Europe. He pretended like he was a modernizer, right? He wanted to modernize Europe. And yes, he brought many changes as well. We cannot deny it. So he introduced many such changes like protection of private property. Before, private property were under risk to be seized by the government. Now he brought the law and granted protection of private property and a uniform system of weights and measures provided by decimal system. Before in France, in different territories, people use different system for weights and measures. Different units were there, right? Instead of that, he brought that uniform, the same system of weights and scales, weights and measures in territory under control of him. Initially, many saw Napoleon as liberator. They saw that this person is liberator. He would modernize the Europe, right? But soon, their enthusiasm about him turned into hostility. So people thought that he would bring liberty, freedom for the people, but soon the Napoleon armies came to be viewed everywhere as an invading force, invader, as outsider attackers. And he was finally defeated at Waterloo in 1815. Many of these measures that carried revolutionary ideas of liberty and modern laws to other parts of Europe, and it had an impact on people after long, even that Napoleon had left. About the effect of the French Revolution as well as effect of the changes brought by introduced by Napoleon, how did affect on the Europe in other territories of Europe, in other areas of Europe. You will learn in the next standard, 10th standard. So impact of it possibly we shall discuss next year. So the ideas of liberty and democratic rights were the most important legacy of the French Revolution. This spread from France to the rest of Europe during 19th century. Before in France, you know that feudal system was there, and so in Europe. Sorry, you were disconnected due to network error. So in France, as we have seen earlier, that feudal system, those landlords were supreme, right? And feudal, basically, it was the manorial system that assets owned by landlords, aristocrats, and those feudal peasants had to either take the land on rent, or many times served like slaves were kept by those landlords, so that the feudal system were abolished. Colonized people revoked the idea of freedom from bondage to their movement to create sovereign nation state like India. Similar as India was British colony, uh, many colonies all over the Europe under control of France. In short, French colonies. So people inspired in the colonies also, colonies which were under control of France as well as under control of other European countries. In short, people, colonized people, that revoked the idea of freedom, right? And they began the movement to create their sovereign nation state. In India, if you talk about Tipu Sultan, you have heard the name. Tipu Sultan as well as Raja Ram Mohan Roy are two examples of individuals who responded to the ideas coming from revolutionary France, and especially Tipu Sultan, who had good relations with the French. So this is all about the French Revolution. If you have any query, any doubt in this chapter, please go ahead, ask here. Have you any doubt in this chapter? Basically, formally, your chapter is over here, finished. Yes, few additional informations are there, which I am going to explain right now. So if you have any doubt, please go ahead, ask me. Have you any doubt? Okay. So here one additional information related to Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and I know there is well-known name. You have heard it before. Raja Ram Mohan Roy was one of the people those inspired by new ideas that were spreading through Europe at that time, basically inspired from the French Revolution. The French Revolution and later the July Revolution, which is revolution in France, exercised his imagination. He could think and talk nothing else when he heard of July Revolution in France. July Revolution in 1830 in France. About July Revolution, you will learn in 10th standard. On his way to England at Cape Town, he insisted on visiting the warships flying the revolutionary tricolor flag through he had been temporarily lame by an accident. That is one incident, one notes that published in Bengal Resistance in the magazines in 1946. One more revolutionary person I'm going to talk about, a female, a lady, a revolutionary lady. So first of all, I'm going to share her picture because images are important as well. So give me a second.
Okay, on your screen, a lady named Olympe de Gauges. Olympe de Gauges. So, Olympe de Gauges was one of the most important politically active women in revolutionary France. She protested against the constitution and the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen, as they executed women from basic rights that each human being was entitled to. As we have seen that Constitution of 1791, right? In Constitution of 1791, rights were given to men only. Women were excluded. So she criticized that. So in 1791, she wrote Declaration of Rights of Women and Citizen instead of Declaration of Rights of Men and Citizen. She wrote Declaration of the Rights of Women and Citizen, which she addressed to the Queen and to the members of National Assembly, demanding that they act upon it. She wanted that rights for women as well. In 1793, she criticized the Jacobins government for forcibly closing down women's clubs. As we have learned earlier, that Jacobins passed an order. Yes, Jacobins government brought many changes in favor of women as well as slaves. However, that Maximilian passed an order banning all the political institution by women and newspapers. So she criticized that decisions as well. She was tried. She was tried by the National Convention as National Convention, a revolutionary tribunal that set up by the Maximilian Robespierre, which charged her with the treason. And you remember that punishment of treason, execution at guillotine. So soon after this, she was executed in guillotine. Olympe de Gauges. One more information that I would like to share, that is about the liberty. What is liberty? And you know that different people have that different conflicting views regarding the liberty. So the revolutionary journalist, I'm talking about one more personality, Camille Demoses, who wrote the following that I'm going to share in 1793. And he was executed shortly after during the reign of terror. As we have discussed before, that Maximilian Robespierre, during the reign of terror, he executed the people whom he considered the enemy of republic. So wait a moment. So here, journalist Camille Desmoulins wrote about the liberty. Let's see. Some people believe that liberty is like a child which needs to go through a phase of being disciplined before it becomes mature. Quite the opposite, liberty is happiness, reason, equality, justice. It is the declaration of rights. You like to finish off your enemies by burdening them. Has anyone heard of something more senseless? Would it be possible to bring a single person to the scaffold without making 10 more enemies among the reasons and friends? So, this article written by Camille Desmoulins. Let's see more about him. So, on 7 February 1794, Robespierre made a speech at the convention, which was then carried by the newspaper Le Montier Universal. And I'm going to read it again. that is an article that which published there. To establish and consolidate democracy, to achieve the peaceful rule of constitutional laws, we must first finish the war of liberty against tyranny. We must annihilate the enemies of the republic at home and abroad, or else we shall perish. In time of revolution, a democratic government may rely on terror. Terror is nothing but justice, swift, severe, and inflexible, and is used to meet the most urgent needs of fatherland. To curb the enemies of liberty through terror is the right of the founder of the republic.